Since my last video about Alibaba, the stock price kept declining to about $157 and only rebounded to $171 as of shooting today, which is about the similar level in mid-2019. And this has troubled many Baba shareholders and made them wonder, is it time to sell to stop loss? Well, by the way, the price drop in mid-2019 was because the investors fear the escalating tariff between the US and China would slow down the economic growth in both countries and therefore affect Alibaba negatively. In this video, I want to firstly talk about the new data privacy law that was passed recently, and I would like to elaborate the regulatory risk in investing in Chinese stocks in general by taking a closer look at the crackdowns. China has passed the Personal Information Protection Law on Friday, 20th of August, which will take effect on the 1st of November. The law calls for companies to get users' consent before collecting personal data, and it has comprehensive rules on how companies should ensure users' data is protected when it's transferred outside of China. A spokesman for the National People's Congress told state news agency Xinhua earlier, the law also aims to protect those who feel strongly about personal data being used for user profiling and by recommending algorithms or the use of big data in setting unfair prices. At a glance of this news, it looks like the Chinese government hammered its tech companies once again by introducing a new law, or it almost looks like a conspiracy that planned by the Chinese government to press its tech giants, or a cranky mother is punishing her children because the eldest one was being disrespectful, and she gave him a $2.8 billion fine to show him and her other children that at the end of the day, I'm the boss and you better stay in line, otherwise there will be more punishments, and here we go. But is the Chinese government shooting itself in the foot, just wanting to show who is the boss, or are there underlying concerns or even crises that need to be addressed? Let's look at the reason behind the abrupt cancellation of Ant's IPO. Alipay is the leading payment platform in China. In 2014, Ant launched Huabei, meaning just spend, which is a virtual credit card which offers the buy now, pay later installment plans. 1 year later, Ant launched Jiebei, meaning just borrow, which is a credit product for larger transactions. Ant originates the loans but doesn't make the loan. It uses AI to assess applicants' credit worthiness, while Ant's partner banks take 98% of credit risk of the loans because Ant only records about 2% of the loans on its balance sheet. Ant acts as a gateway that receives around 2% transaction fee and 40% card of the interest rate because of its huge consumer pool. Ant's partner banks underwrite the loans but fully rely on Ant's AI to perform the due diligence on the qualification. Does this sound familiar to you? Yes, it's the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. When some lenders were desperate to find more new home buyers, they extended the loans to people with weak credit scores known as subprime loans. Later on, investment banks joined the party. They bought the mortgages and packaged them into mortgage-backed security and sold them to investors.
This is your basic mortgage bond. All right? The originals were simple. They were just thousands of AAA mortgages bundled together, guaranteed by the US government. The modern ones are different. They're private, and they're made up of layers of tranches. The highest level AAA is getting paid first. The lowest rated B is getting paid last, taking on defaults first. Now, obviously, if you're buying Bs, you can make more money, but they're a little risky. Sometimes they fail. Chris? Somewhere along the line, these Bs and double Bs went from a little risky to dog shit. Where's the trash? Behind you. I'm talking rock bottom FICO scores. No income verification. Adjustable rates. Dog shit.
All of these, the lender bar was set very low. Borrowers started to default on their loans. Then it was the crisis.
Bs, 0. Double Bs, 0. Triple Bs, 0. And then that happens.
What is that?
That's America's housing market.
If you're interested, you can watch the movie The Big Short to refresh your memory. So essentially, Ant was doing the same thing. He originates the loans but doesn't underwrite them. The partner banks fully rely on Ant's AI credit score checking, which means that the lending standard could be set really low. So there was a bomb hidden in Ant's business model, which not only would harm the Chinese financial system, but also can throw another global financial crisis given 2 trillion yuan, which is $308 billion lending by Huabei and Jiebei. Now let's look at the Chinese Uber Didi Chuxing, why its app was forced to be removed from the Chinese App Store. 2 days after Didi's IPO on New York Stock Exchange, the Cyberspace Administration of China had asked Didi to stop accepting new user registrations, saying that the app has serious violations of laws and regulations pertaining to the collection of personal information. Unlike Uber, Didi collects lots of information about consumers, things like where they go, their age, their occupation, and their income level. So these information can easily be used to target other products, and tens of thousands of consumers already complained that they had to pay a higher fee by using an iPhone than a cheaper mobile phone because they are targeted as the business traveler. Now let's look at China's dominant food delivery company Meituan. It is subject to get fined 1 billion yuan due to it preventing the business to be listed on other platforms. Like a restaurant owner in Beijing who said she initially listed her restaurant on Meituan and paid a commission fee of 18%. She said Meituan staff told her that since it was the lowest fee available on the site, she could not list on other food delivery sites. When the pandemic cut off revenue from indoor diners, she listed her restaurant Alibaba's food delivery platform. That prompted angry calls from Meituan staff who said that she would have to pay a higher 25% commission fee if she didn't delist from the platform. She decided to quit Meituan. There has been a growing anger towards the big tech companies in China. What the Chinese government is trying to do is to create a common prosperity environment where the giant companies are not monopolizing the market and the small businesses have their fair share. To lead a country with 1.4 billion population, to put that into perspective, which is about 4.2 times of the US population, from 50% poverty level to 0% in just 20 years is not an easy task. And sometimes you do need a dominant government to take whatever lead to move the economy forward.
The Chinese government will allow businesses to flourish. It was one of the most remarkable things that ever happened in the history of the world when a bunch of committed communists just looked at the prosperity of places like Singapore and said, the hell with this, we're not going to stay here in poverty. We're going to copy what works. And they changed communism. They just accepted Adam Smith and added it to their communism. And said, now we have communism with Chinese characteristics. But the Chinese have proved you don't need free speech to have a wonderful economy. They just copied Adam Smith and left out the free speech, and it worked fine for them. Their position was so dire and the poverty was so extreme, they needed very extreme methods, totalitarian methods, if you will, to get out of the fix they were in. So I think what China has done was probably right for China.
I know it's very tempting to use the recent moves by the Chinese government as a proof to take control of these companies, to centralize power, or to force these companies to detach from the US market or even start a cold war against the US. But if we put ourselves into the Chinese regulators' shoes, it's very hard to swallow the fact that when someone criticizes the Chinese financial system has outdated supervision, while at the same time, his company was taking advantage of the outdated supervision because the digital payment platform didn't have to follow the same capital and leverage restriction as other commercial banks do. I can understand that as an international investor who is not very familiar with the Chinese culture or the communist regulations, you probably got a shock every time you saw a new regulation coming in targeting its companies. But actually, all these Chinese regulations are not so much different with the US government's actions towards its tech companies.
Rules on how tech companies collect data and track their users. It says the agency should bar unfair methods of competition on internet marketplaces and consider issues like privacy and so-called killer acquisitions as it ramps up enforcement.
And we see the regulations in a proper context, they are reasonable. Although the Chinese government's the speed and the determination in addressing them is a little bit painful for us to accept. Instead, they should take a more gradual and slower approach by not disturbing the market so much.
When the US government wanted to crack down on monopoly, It could take years and decades simply because of the institutional checks and balances. China's model is slightly different. Other people think it's a lot different. And that model allows them to do things quickly, identify issues decisively, and then make a policy, right after that, and then move on to implement that. If we're not used to that pace, we need to get used to that pace, because you can't take for granted that when a company is powerful enough, nobody will be able to touch them. So I think it is something that probably is a little bit of an awakening and wake-up call. Investor need to understand that the company that invest could win, and they will win big, but probably not take all, and probably some rebalancing could happen. And outside profit is probably something shouldn't be driving every single investment decision, especially when valuation is already at this lofty level.
So you don't think in the long run this will hurt the Hong Kong market?
I don't think so. I think this back and forth, this swing between fairness and the equity and efficiency is a very healthy, self-regulatory move that will allow us not to become too excess, and allow the society, allow the economy to move in greater harmony.
Emerging markets can be extremely volatile and uncertain because sometimes the political interference can play a bigger role. And for Chinese stock, this regulatory risk is built into the package of the ADR. Of course, the VIE structure puts another risky layer on top of that. But after rounds of regulations, the policies should be much more clear, and the stock price has been hit by all this negative news. I think the risk is well reflected into the price as well. So this is the time that you got to decide if you are willing or be able to take the risk. If you cannot handle the risk, maybe you shouldn't invest in any of these Chinese ADRs like Baba, because there are so many other opportunities, so many other growth or value companies for you to invest. Well, at least this is my take. What about you? What do you think of the regulatory risk in the Chinese ADRs? Please leave a comment below. Well, thank you so much for watching. My name's Irene. I'll see you next week. Bye.